Hello everyone, I'm the Canadian Gaming Penguin. So, the servers are congested, as I state the obvious. While I haven't experienced some of the repercussions of that, if you call them repercussions, which I don't really because it is encouraging to see so many new players, the server I play on has definitely had an influx of new players, and not just because of Wanderers being there. That is, of course, other players visiting this server. To address this, we have a new letter from Producer and Director Naoki Yoshida, which I am going to go over in this video. It's written in, well, first of all, it's long as I stammer. It's long, so I'm going to section this off to, as you can see, we have different headlines, and I'm going to section it off based on that. As I zoom super fast, so you probably couldn't see any of that. I will read out the section first, kind of give my own take on what's written, and sort of opinions and not all sort of thing as well. This is more of an informative of what the plan that Square Enix is doing, and their apologies for the disturbance in our gameplay that has been occurring. And I have to say wow to some of the statistics that they've given us to this. Now, let's get to it. So we have our, and this is of course on the Lodestone itself, so you can find it. It's also been shared on the social media accounts, at least on Facebook I saw it. I imagine it'll be on Twitter as well. Anyways, so regarding the growing player population and plans to alleviate world congestion. Greetings, Fantasy XIV players. This is your producer and director Naoki Yoshida, aka Yoshi P, as I will address him as later on. First and foremost, I would like to extend my thanks to all of you for your continued support. Development on our latest expansion pack, Endwalker, continues as we focus on implementing content and transitioning to the check and polish phase. Expectations for 6.0 are high and have resulted in an increased interest in Final Fantasy XIV, especially in North America and Europe, where we are currently experiencing an extreme influx of new players. Today I would like to go into details about the server congestion resulting from this influx and the steps we are taking to address it. The message is a long one, so please bear with me. And that addresses it right as an introduction right there. So starting with the player population growth. As mentioned above, Final Fantasy XIV is currently experiencing a dramatic increase in its player base. This increase is not only limited to the global version, served by the Japanese, North American, and European data centers, but also the locally operated Chinese and Korean versions as well. Recently, we have experienced record user numbers in all regions, with a vast amount of new players beginning their adventures. In particular, the increase in North America and European region players over the past 2 weeks has been both so staggering and unexpected that many players are now having difficulty logging in or creating new characters due to server congestion, and for this we deeply apologize. Now, as I mentioned on my server, I haven't really experienced any repercussions, so to speak, with that, in that there's extreme server lag or anything like that. Normally that only happens in, like, for example, the Gold Saucer. It's been very laggy the last few days. That's expected, and especially now because there's the event going on. But in a general sense, it usually only happened, and I've only experienced this the once because Stormblood had already been out and it was in post-Stormblood, so I've only been around for Shadowbringers when it was first out. And I do remember some of the lag, but we had instances, so they were prepared for that at that time. Obviously, they haven't prepared for this because it's unprecedented in the sense that they couldn't expect it, which they kind of address later on too, of some of the things that they will do in response to this. Obviously, they were expecting this as well with Endwalker, and so they would prepare for that. But anyway, on my own server, you can see there's the influx of players, which is surprising because the server that I play on is very small to begin with. So you can definitely notice there's a change when you see, instead of 10 people spread out through an area, instead you see 40 people here, and then 40 people in another place, and then 40 people in another place, and no, it's not the same 40 people in those 3 places. So the frustration of trying to create new characters, I can definitely understand. Fortunately, they do have the setup where you can save your visual appearance, but not your name or your birth date, if you will, for your character. And that can be a bit of annoying, especially if you finally found a name, and then when you finally are able to create your character, the name is taken. That probably won't happen for a lot of people, but at least you can save your appearance, because if you're like me, I usually take about 40 minutes just to design a character. Yes, 40 minutes. Anyways, moving on. Raising simultaneous login caps. The population that can be logged into each world server at one time is capped. However, as some of you have noticed, this cap is not the same for all servers and differs somewhat between data centers, Mana, Aether, Chaos, etc. The main reason for this has to do with a data center's matching server. A matching server can only handle so much information, so to ensure that it functions properly, a capacity limit must be set. This limit determines the overall maximum population of a data center, which is then divided by the number of worlds in the data center to calculate how many players can be logged into each world. If a matching server were to overload, it would result in the duty finder ceasing to function properly and instability when entering instanced content, hence the importance of login caps. And I do recall I've seen comments of people talking about how when Ralger's Reach or something was first out with Stormblood and they had a lot of issues, they didn't have an instanced content cap at the time, from what I recall from the comments that I've seen. And because of that, the game would crash a lot for some people, well, for general, because there wasn't that cap, and everybody trying to access this instanced content at the same time overloaded the system. So since then, they've obviously set this place, and that's why Shadowbringers had such a smooth, launch, effectively. I don't recall there really being any issues, technically, technology speaking. This is obviously their explanation as to why there's caps. Anyways, so the difference in login caps occurred due to differences in the number of worlds per data center, as well as differences in matching server performance. As it happens, the matching servers used in North American data centers were recently upgraded to higher performance models. Continued optimization of this new equipment has allowed us, as of July 16th, to increase the maximum number of simultaneous logins across the North America data centers by 18,000, or approximately 750 per world server. I have to say that is a significant boost, and at the same time, it also seems small because of the division of the world server. But that's huge. Anyway, a matching server upgrade for the European data centers, while currently planned for the immediate future, however, is still pending. As such, until the upgrade is implemented, it will be difficult for us to raise world login caps to the same degree as those of North American worlds. That said, the team is currently working hard to optimize existing servers in an attempt to increase the caps, if by a smaller amount, and will endeavor to make continued adjustments and improvements while maintaining game stability. Obviously, they hadn't expected such an increase in the surrounding areas, so they hadn't worked on the European servers as well. So Europe, you will have to wait some time. Despite the aforementioned cap increase, over the weekend of July 17th and 18th, several North American world servers experienced periods of 6 to 7 hours at maximum login capacity. As a result, character creation was unavailable for long periods of time, and players faced average login wait times of 10 to 20 minutes. For players residing on worlds in the European data center, weekend login wait times were as high as 40 minutes. We deeply apologize for the situation in both regions, and all I can say to that is, wow. Wow. Like, can I say more than that? Just wow. Like, yeah. I got no words for that other than wow. Character creation and login wait times. When a world server reaches its maximum capacity, any additional players attempting to log in will be placed in a queue and must wait until a player already on the server logs out before being admitted. As character creation requires a player to be logged in order to write the newly created data to the database, new characters cannot be created while the server is full. While we regret having to do so, we would humbly ask two things of our players to ensure that new players have the opportunity to create characters. First, we ask those not actively engaged in the game to log out of their characters rather than remaining logged in while idle. Second, we request that you avoid creating new characters during peak congestion times. So my own recommendation is to find a period where it's either early in the morning, like 4 or 5 a.m. even, or really late at night, 1 to 2 a.m. Yeah, I'm really talking that late, to be able to create your character. Obviously, it's not ideal, but it's an option. And for login wise as well, if your server is congested, we do have the options now to try to log into a different server that might not be congested, but do keep in mind you will be restricted to some degree as to what you can actually do in the game for a period of time when you're not visiting on your own home world. And I will leave it at that. I also encourage if you're going to be idle and you know you're going to be idle for more than 30 minutes, just log out. Just log out. You might have to have a queue when you log back in, but I mean, you're not doing anything, and maybe somebody only has an hour to play the game, and while you're in that game, you're that one person holding them back from being able to play, and by the time you come back, that's when their time is up. It doesn't hurt you to log out. You can always log back in. As mentioned above, those who log in while the server is congested may experience login queues, which allow players into the server at a reduced rate in the order that they joined the queue. Login queues occur for two reasons. The first is that the act of logging in temporarily increases a server's load. When a world experiences a large number of players attempting to log in at once, it may become overloaded and crash. This is best avoided by staggering logins. The second is, as explained earlier, that each world has a maximum login capacity to maintain stability. In such cases, players may only be admitted once others log out. Now, if you've ever experienced some DDoS attacks against the server in the games and you get kicked out of the game, you will know that there are some really, really, really long queues. And that's mostly because everybody's trying to log in back at the same time. And of course, you have to stagger that. Otherwise, you're going to crash the system again. And then you're defeating the purpose of having the system in place in the first place. And then you can't play the game. So it's just explaining the reason why there's the queues and how it works and why it works the way it does. So we ask that you patiently remain in the queue should you encounter wait times. These queues are necessary to ensure that servers remain stable, while providing a safe, fair means for players to enter the game during periods of increased user activity. Please also note that in order to prioritize our paying customers, the login queue is not available to players using the free trial version, regardless of whether it occurs due to a surge in logins or a world reaching its capacity. Logging in will only be possible for those players after a world's login queue is cleared. We once again apologize for the inconvenience, but ask for your understanding on this point. And I will personally point out that it makes sense that the paying customers are prioritized over the free trial, because this is a sub-based game. And I mean, we're paying to play this game, as opposed to being on the free trial where you're not paying at all. I mean, I shouldn't have to explain this, but I do expect there are going to be some people upset about this, and I mean, it's only fair. Now, of course, this isn't going to be an issue for prolonged periods of time. They are addressing it already, and we'll get to that in just a second. And they're going to be addressing this further because they, again, I'll address this later in this letter, have plans for how to remediate this situation. Remediate? Fix this? Whatever. English. Words. They're working on it. Automatic logout. As an emergency measure to combat congestion, we are also planning the early implementation of the auto logout feature originally slated for the expansion launch. With the release of patch 5.58, which just occurred, on Tuesday, today, July 20th specifically. If no input is let's start that sentence again. With the release of patch 5.58, if no input is detected from a character for an extended period of time, the character will be automatically logged out of the game. This feature will be further expanded to address the surge in logins expected for the launch of Endwalker. So as I just said, that they were working on this and have already done something to remediate this situation. And we understand that this feature will not be the most popular with our players, but would like to assure you that it is an effective means to temporarily combat congestion. We apologize for any inconvenience its implementation may cause, and thank you for bearing with us to ensure that the game remains accessible during this time. And quite frankly, I hope that there's only a minority of characters of people who get upset about the automatic logout feature. While I can understand it can be frustrating because then you have a queue time that you have to wait for. If you're going to be idle for more than 30 minutes, you really don't need to be in the game. And with the congestion, I think you can swallow that for a while until such a time that it's been addressed so that congestion isn't an issue, and then you can be idle for as long as you want. Obviously, we're going to have to deal with that again with Endwalker because there is going to be the influx of players, as always with every expansion, or major patches in itself as well. So, kind of get used to that. Anyways, well, I guess not with the major patches per se. Maybe the first one, or maybe the second, but not so much. Anyway, rambling. Additional worlds and data centers. A fundamental solution to congestion is an increase in world servers, as well as the addition of data centers. As we have already announced, we are currently in the final stages of preparing our new Oceania data center. At the same time, we have been moving forward with plans to expand even further, putting wheels into motion in the forms of approving budgets, securing funding, and purchasing equipment. We intended to assess user numbers and planned content for after the release of 6.0, and then work to have new servers or data centers prepared for 7.0. The current situation, however, has compelled us to re-evaluate this timeline and determine if it is possible to speed up the process. There are, however, two obstacles that stand in our way. Problem number one is insufficient servers due to semiconductor shortage. And this is in a field of everything technological basically has been affected by this. The COVID-19 pandemic has seen an extreme drop in semiconductor production in factories across the globe. This, coupled with an increase in demand for electronics due to more people working at home, has resulted in an international shortage of semiconductors that, in turn, has resulted in a prolonged delay in the delivery of the servers we ordered for our data centers. We have even looked into investing more than market value to speed up delivery, but to no avail. We are not giving up, however, and are in continued talks with vendors from around the world to find a timely solution to this problem. And I have to say it's only because of COVID-19 that I've actually paid attention to some of the technical components for various pieces of technology, such as GPUs and all that. That I've actually paid attention to that and how it's how the pandemic and restrictions have affected the production of it, and not just the production of said technology pieces or components, but also that of getting the raw material that actually makes those components. So, I mean, it's a long chain of delays. or demand and supply issues, etc. So it's kind of interesting in the how do these things get made and what causes delays and all that stuff. Anyways, so problem number 2 is travel restrictions. As we touched upon briefly at the Digital Fan Festival, global travel restrictions due to the pandemic have prevented our server infrastructure team from physically visiting the data center locations, causing a considerable reduction in work efficiency. While over the past year and a half, the team has managed to work remotely with overseas staff on the Oceania data center, it has been a challenge that our staff will have to face once again as we look to expand server capacity in Europe or North America, or both. I'll tack on. That said, many members of the team have been proactively getting their COVID vaccinations and are looking into options such as vaccine passports as we plan for in-person visits to data centers. Of course, even should the opportunity to travel arise, we will respect each staff member's opinion on the matter and put their safety first. We will continue to closely monitor the situation in other countries, and once it has been deemed safe and efficient given mandatory quarantines, etc., we'll take further steps towards resuming on-site work overseas. Though the obstacles that still face us are many, we believe that the best, most effective method for providing our players a stress-free gameplay experience is through the introduction of new servers and data centers. To see this goal realized as soon as reasonably possible, we on the development, operations, and infrastructure teams pledge to continue to do our utmost. So, they are looking to expand servers, data centers, so on and so forth to address this increase. Obviously, they're gonna have to do something to a moderate degree before Endwalker, because I expect that Endwalker will have issues, and that's obviously why Yoshi P is addressing this right now because of, and you'll see in conclusion that he addresses this, that there's been people upset about this and extremely concerned about how with the influx now, we're in the middle of a dead zone in terms of patches, in the sense of there isn't any new content until 6.0. I mean, technically there is some new content, but it's so minimal that it's almost nothing. It's mostly bug fixes in preparation for 6.0. I mean, we're at 5.58, so there's we're 3 months away? July, August, September, October. Okay, just shy of 4 months away from the pre-release of Endwalker. So, I mean, that's not a whole lot of time. Anyways, so in conclusion, as producer, the responsibility for being unable to predict the current influx of new players falls to me, and I'm going to say I disagree with you, Yoshi P. You have absolutely no control over this whatsoever, and even I wouldn't have predicted this. I think the influx of players has been so prevalent, especially in North America and probably Europe, is that people who had been putting off the game or had not willed to try it before have. And of course, I'm speaking to a lot of the WoW players that are coming over and mentioning the WoW players and new players in general. Welcome to the game. There is no way to really predict that so many players or more people would be even influenced to try this. And I get there's the growth with Shadowbringers because it's a really good expansion and it has just so much influence from Shadowbringers itself, and then the influence of other players coming. There's no way to predict this. I mean, I predicted it with Endwalker, of course. That's an expansion, so right now and during this period of time when there's a lull in content, I mean, it's the perfect time to come to play because you have lots of time to, well, catch up, so to speak, but you can have lots of time to enjoy the game, to get through the process, to get to the new content once it's available. I mean, 4 months is a lot of time, even if you just play for an hour a day. And if you only played the main scenario quest, and even if you did the side quests, like, There's lots of time. Anyway, so Yoshi P, it's not on you. I will argue that it's not on you. Anyways, so the days before an expansion's launch are supposed to be ones of excitement, but instead they've brought many players grief, and for that I personally am extremely sorry. Again, Yoshi P, you don't have to apologize. Yeah. For years, we have watched devoted players from around the world stream their time with Final Fantasy XIV, and now we sit in awe while new fans join their ranks. As we enter our final push in the development of Endwalker, it is this constant flow of positive energy that motivates all of us on the development and operations team to carry on. Nothing can compare to the feeling we get watching you enjoy playing the game we've created. We are aware of the burden that we placed on our player base and are working diligently to lighten it in the coming weeks and months. We will continue to develop measures to combat server congestion, and will keep you up to date with any and all developments in this area. Thank you once again for your continued support. Naoki Yoshida, Final Fantasy XIV producer and director. So, Yoshi P's humility and of addressing the player base is something that I've always admired in my time when I started playing Final Fantasy XIV, which was almost 4 years ago now, I think. Or 3 years ago. I don't know. Time flies. And I don't feel like he should need to apologize, rather, for these things. But it's comforting that he recognizes, and it's something I've always thought Yoshi P recognizes, is that transparency has always been big with him. Especially with the failed launch of 1.0, which was before my time obviously playing the game, and was before my time even considering playing the game, and not because of its bad launch, it's just simply because it was a sub-based game. Anyways, transparency has always been big with Yoshi P, so being transparent about the situation and the recognition that you shouldn't have to ask your player base to not play the game so that other players can play the game. I mean, when can you say that's ever happened to you for a game that you've played? I don't think I've ever experienced this before. I've had well, that's not true. I have had issues with a web-based game, which was having server issues, but that was because of some internal behind-the-scenes stuff that was causing issues, some old code and that sort of speak. But we're also talking about a very small-scale game with a small company that had issues, not a AAA company, and a big MMO for that matter, and it's a web-based game in comparison. But yeah, so obviously we have some congestion issues right now. Some ways you can remediate that is to, it's going to be a hassle to see through all these names and stuff. You can turn off the display names of the other players that are around. You can set it up so that you can only see them if you select them, that sort of thing. So you might want to check your character configuration for your character in the game to try to address that. And there's also going to be people spamming different abilities and stuff. You can turn those settings off. Again, character configuration. I show it in my Make It Rain campaign playthrough video towards the beginning if you want to see where that is. Obviously, remember that when you're actually in battle, you might want to turn that back on. It's also nice to know where that is if you ever do alliance raids and you can't actually see what you're doing because there's too many shiny lights. Anyway, so obviously if you have congestion issues on your servers or your data centers, fixes are coming. A fix somewhat is coming, and obviously we have the auto logout feature now enabled. So obviously we're going to have that for the next 4 months, plus probably 2 months after with Endwalker's release, and possibly longer than that as well, until they can physically actually address the congestion issues with adding more data centers or more servers, etc. And they did address this during the Digital Fan Festival, that it's more of the physical and not being able to physically get to these server locations, etc., to increase these things so that there's less issues. I think they were addressing this more specifically with housing and why it was too difficult right now to add more housing, air awards, etc., because they physically can't access the servers and that such. And it's remote means, working remotely when you need a physical, hands-on approach is a lot different and a little difficult because, you're addressing people, you're not addressing a robot. You can't just say, do exactly what I say. You can't see the same things that they're seeing. You can only tell them so much through words. So basically, be patient. The congestion is obviously a frustration. Obviously, as I said, I haven't personally experienced it. I have experienced some loading lag, but that can also be accounted to my internet, but because my internet is not reliable. I live in the rurals, and it's definitely not a city internet, but that's beside the point. So, patience. Log out if you know you're going to be idle for more than 30 minutes, is my opinion. And I don't mean if you're in a queue. If you're in a queue, you shouldn't be kicked out of the game. You can't help it if your roulette queue is 30 minutes or longer. Do other stuff in the game while you're waiting. There's Beast Tribe quests, there's crafting, there's gathering, there's leveling up your jobs, there's hunts, there's leave quests, there's guild hests. Wait, can you even do those when you're in a duty? Yes, you can. Queue. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. There's so much to do while you're waiting in your queue, so it's not like you're going to be idle anyway. You could if you wanted to. Sometimes I do other stuff, too. Ugh. Anyways, I just wanted to address this letter, which I thought was well written and explains the situation and emphasizes, obviously you can see in the bold red text, what they're doing with this specifically, and obviously the remorse that this is a situation that was not predicted. Could you have predicted this? An influx of players, yeah, but not necessarily right now, 4 months before the expansion, or to the degree that the influx is. Anyways, I think I'm just blabbering at this point, so I'm going to leave this video here. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching.